But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Those standing up for responsible treatment of children with gender dysphoria let out a cheer on Thursday when the NHS finally decided to shut down the controversial Tavistock clinic. On Monday, we heard from ex-patient and whistleblower Cara Bell, who was prescribed life-changing puberty blockers at the age of 16 after just 3 consultations and later underwent surgery to remove her breasts.
I was elated to find that out. But I am remaining cautious about the whole thing. Medicalising children definitely shouldn't be allowed, and it's disgraceful.
Very, very brave woman. But as Rod Liddle believes, liberal falsehoods around sex and gender are still causing damage to vulnerable young people, and he joins me now. So, Rod, obviously, we were just talking about pronouns, and maybe that is the funny, light-hearted, ridiculous side of this argument. But then we talk about the Tavistock clinic, and you see a young woman like Cara Bell who has literally had her life destroyed, and you actually realise this isn't funny, is it, Rod?
No, the stuff you were talking about, Dan, isn't funny. That's not.
But it's ridiculous. Funny. You know, it's ridiculous.
You know, it may seem ridiculous, but it's not remotely funny. It's what happened at the Tavistock clinic is merely the symptom of Alex deciding that her son should be called whatever pronoun he thinks he should be called. That is the stuff which causes it. What you have to do, if we are to sort this out, and what we're going to see with the Tavistock clinic, I suspect, is an awful lot of legal action, an awful lot of writs coming in, and an awful lot of lives which have been ruined. It is child abuse by any other name. And it is probably the most appalling thing that the NHS has done since its creation. And we are all kind of complicit in it because we all went along with the falsehoods upon what this is based. And that's that there is somehow a vast number of people in this country who feel that their body is not theirs in some way and that it should be a different gender, that there's no direct relationship between sex and gender, and that someone who, by dint of some ghastly surgical procedure, decides to transition from being a man into being a woman somehow is properly a woman. And it's those falsehoods which now need to be addressed. The Tavistock clinic is only the tip of that iceberg. It's only the expression of what happens when we follow this absolute idiocy, this absurdity, this denial of reality, this post-rational attempt that to prove that everyone can be whatever they wish to be, despite all the evidence to the contrary. Unless we attack the root cause of that, Dan, this stuff is going to go on wherever the next Tavistock clinic is going to spring up.
OK, so connecting the two things together, Rod, if Demi Lovato said to you, I want to be known as they, them, she, her, you say, don't be so ridiculous.
Well, I would never speak to Demi Lovato, I don't suppose. But no, if she said that to me, I would tell her I will call you what I think you are. And that is a woman. You are a she. And that's that. Not that I'm ever going to use a pronoun for you, but if I did, we have to get away from this. We can't be what we think we want to be. We can't all do that. You know, when my daughter was 9, she wanted to be a lynx. But sadly, the surgery wasn't available for that at the time. She knows, we all know, you cannot be something that you are not.
What about the argument, though, Rod, that it's just about, OK, Demi Lovato, she's a different case because this is just clearly a troubled Hollywood attention seeker. What about someone who has actually undergone surgery, transitioned and is happy? So not Cara Bell, who obviously went through that surgery and it was a huge mistake, but someone who's happy, Rod. You know, let's talk about a Caitlyn Jenner, who's actually on the show next week. Now, Caitlyn Jenner, she's great on all of this madness. She doesn't think that biological men should compete in women's sport, for example, but she's happily gone through the surgery and she wants us to describe her as a woman. Do you have a problem with that?
Yes, she's not a woman. And however admirable her views may be other than that, I'm sorry, you cannot buck the chromosomes. You cannot buck what science tells you. And that is there. It is there inherent in the chromosomes. And that is the whole problem we've got. It's a problem we've got with having, trans men or trans women. I can't remember what way we have to call a man who has transitioned into being a woman. What I mean is men. We can't have men appearing on female wards in hospitals or in female prisons, or using female changing facilities, or competing against females in athletics. It is an absurdity. And I'm afraid the absurdity springs from classifying people in such a way. And, I don't want to be hurtful. I don't want to be hurtful to Caitlyn Jenner. I don't want to be hurtful to any transgender guy or woman watching this. But we have to have a sense of reality. And once we lose that sense of reality, then we are down the path towards the Tavistock Clinic and towards men with large beards and a penis winning women's cycle races. That is where it springs from. And you've got to attack this at its root.
And it was really disturbing, wasn't it, Rod, to read the former Equality Minister, Kemi Badenoch, in the Sunday Times, where you also have a column, talking about how the blob, the health establishment, as I call them, they didn't even want her to speak to Cara Bell. It was almost like there was an attempt to cover up what was going on at the Tavistock.
Well, there is an attempt to cover up. And the problem is the Tavistock Clinic, this wasn't rogue doctors operating in this area beyond our view. This was something which the Conservative government decided was perfectly okay to happen. And that's because everybody bought in, for reasons of either fear or stupidity, to this argument that one could change one's gender, and that there were lots of people who wished to do so, and that it was terribly important that we should go down this path. The idea that it's just the doctors is an absurdity. And Kemi was absolutely right. And don't forget, one of the other leadership contenders, Penny Mordaunt, said in the House of Commons, and a trans woman is a woman. That is the stuff we've got to stop. We've got to stop Stonewall spewing out this propaganda into people's schools, into the schools where children are learning that it's perfectly okay to transition. And if you want to be a woman, or if you want to be a man, and you're neither of those at the moment, then you can be it. No, sorry, you can't. It's not as simple as that. I ought to mention that there is a tiny minority, a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people who genuinely do have a kind of intersex.
Yeah, well, you're actually born with both genders, and both.
Who are born with and that's completely different. And of course, this is, I would have thought, embarrassing and a problem for them as well.
Yeah. No, indeed. Well, Rod Liddle, don't worry, I'm not going to ask for your pronouns. I wouldn't risk that. That's the associate spectator editor, Rod Liddle, who's written about this in the magazine this week. Well worth a read.